Conversation with the Geographer. I'm Mike DeVivo, professor of geography at Grand Rapids Community College. And today, I'm very happy to have a GRCC alumna on the screen before us, really, is MaryAnne Flier, a cross-cultural community manager at Treetops Collective. MaryAnne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, as you should be, right? This is wonderful because it's your interview will give people an idea of the breadth of geography in terms of what geographers do and what geographers can do. But before we get into what you're doing right now, I'm going to ask you to reflect upon your upbringing, where you've lived your childhood. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And your studies in geography, and think about what really sparked interest in geography, and let's go from there.
Okay, that's a big one. That's a big question. So I was born here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But my dad is a pastor, so we moved around the Midwest a little bit as I was growing up. So I lived for several years in Wisconsin, several years in Northwest Iowa, very rural areas, both of those states, or the areas that I was living in those states. Very rural, very white, I was very sheltered, I will just say. Moved back to the Grand Rapids area when I was 20. Let's see, how much do I need to go into? Just worked at a landscaping company as an office assistant when I moved here. Met my husband there. And long story short, got married, had a couple kids. And for several years, I stayed home with kids. During that time, I became really passionate in social justice, racial equity. And when the kids started school, it was kind of like, all right, what am I going to do with my life? I haven't had a career that I love. These are the things I'm passionate about. What should I do with them besides just posting on social media, right? So I started taking classes at GRCC, just figured I would take classes I was interested in. Had to take either physics or chemistry or physical geography for my associate's degree.
And you made the right choice.
And I did make the right choice because here I am. I do not do physics or chemistry. So I was like, I guess I'll just see what this physical geography thing is. And of course, had you as my professor. And honestly, I was reflecting on this before this interview. Because you had us in that class watch some of these conversations with the geographer videos. And I think that those videos were really what first drew me. It was like, oh, I remember watching Anne Bond and her work around incarceration, I believe. And there was somebody else doing work with trafficking in...
Amanda Colgrove?
Yeah. Is it St. Louis, Kansas City? And just thinking like, I did not know any of those things were geography, right? And then you just kind of pushed me over the edge and said, I see what you are passionate about. You should think about geography. So ended up doing that, majored in geography, or pre-major, I guess, in geography at GRCC, and then transferred to Aquinas College and got my bachelor's in both geography and community leadership there, the spring of 2022. So have been at Treetops ever since.
So let's talk about the relationship between this community leadership and geography at Aquinas. Can you elaborate on how your understanding of matters geographic were really useful in pursuing this community leadership specialty?
Yeah. So I'm very much, even though physical geography was the class that I took that ended up leading me into geography, I'm very much more on the human side of geography. So Aquinas has this community leadership major that I think is pretty unique. And it really kind of combines human geography and sociology and a little bit of economics and just kind of all of the things I cared about. So I figured, I may as well do this and geography and kind of see how they can connect in even deeper ways. So for my community leadership capstone project, I ended up doing a mapping project for local boys and girls clubs. And so I was really tying together geography and that community nonprofit type thing for that capstone project. But really have continued to see geography just being central to my role here too, because people and place change each other, right? So Treetops works with primarily immigrant and refugee women. So there's all of those topics of displacement and resettlement and, the push and pull factors that we learn about in immigration and ethnicity class. And then, of course, the impact that they have in this community, on the society in West Michigan. So.
Well, we're going to elaborate on the work that you do with Treetops and your experiences. But, previously, years ago now, I guess, you've shared with me some incidents in the local area that really disturbed you concerning social injustice. Some of it regarding police activity and other things. Would you care to share some of those experiences that you witnessed, conversations that you had with others that really encouraged you to continue down this path of ameliorating social injustice? And I say this because I have argued that today, in American geographic thought, this paradigm of social justice is extremely important, and it has been for about 20 years. Would you care to talk?
Yeah, sure. Yes, my husband is Black, so my children are biracial, and it was soon after my son was born that the policing situation really kind of blew up in the national news. Of course, things had been an issue long before that, but right around that time was when Michael Brown and Ferguson happened and all of those instances. So I became really passionate about that. And to be honest, I have shifted a little bit in my thinking on that topic. And I have definitely not come to a place where I think policing is just great. And there's nothing wrong with the justice system or anything like that. Through an internship I had with Boys and Girls Club, the Boys and Girls Club in Grand Rapids partners with Grand Rapids Police with the goal of bridging some of the divide there, right? And just having conversations with different police officers and folks in that realm, I came to realize just the complexity of it, right? So, and not excusing any of the terrible things that do happen. So it's hard I want to make that very clear that I am not excusing the injustices that do occur. But just not painting with as broad of strokes as I did at one time, I think, is where I really have landed. Seeing the humanity in everybody. And we talk about that a lot in our work. One of Treetops' values is wholeness. So seeing the whole person and all of their stories and all of their experiences, and how all of our stories and experiences make us who we are too. So all that being said, I have been able to join a committee of the Kent County Welcome Plan, which is a collaborative of a lot of different organizations and government entities around welcoming well and being in just a good neighbor to newcomers to the area. So I joined the Safe and Connected Communities Committee of the Welcome Plan. And the entire goal of that committee is to bridge refugee and immigrant communities with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So we were able to host an event here at Treetops last fall, where members of the African community, all different folks from all different countries, of course, but the African community in general, came to Treetops. We had members of all different area law enforcement agencies. And it was really a conversation. It was not anybody giving a lecture or teaching like, well, this is what law enforcement needs to do. It really started with the refugee and immigrant community sharing their ideas of policing in their home countries and how those ideas have carried here and their uncertainties about policing here, and just really wanting clarification on a lot of things, like why do you all carry guns? If, police carried guns in our country, it meant that they were corrupt and were going to take your money from you, right? So all of the different stories that they shared were really helpful for the law enforcement to hear. And then the law enforcement was able to answer their questions, just dialogue. So we, asked for feedback from the community leaders who had attended with community members, and they all shared that that had been incredible. The community members really appreciated the opportunity to have that dialogue, and just wondered how we could keep those conversations going so that it wasn't just a one-time, okay, and now we're all good. We all know that we're not all good after one conversation, right? So we did try for a while to have drop-in hours here at Treetops, where an officer from a different law enforcement agency was here every Monday for community members to drop in and chat, ask questions, share concerns. And for whatever reason, that did not really pan out. Community members didn't come and take advantage of that. So we are still trying to figure out what it looks like to have something like that on a regular basis. But in the meantime, are still working as a committee to plan some more events like that, and just make sure that refugee and immigrant folks know that they've got at least one contact in each law enforcement agency that they can call on if they have a question or a concern. Mm-hmm. So,
well, that was
a very long answer.
but it's a very good one because it's indicative of how complex this issue really is. It's not a simple yes, no, black, white, arithmetic response. It's very complex. It's a complicated matter. And what you are able to do, I suppose, somewhat through your leadership and geography training combined, is to facilitate dialogue, to build relationships that foster understanding among the parties involved. And that's no easy task.
Right. It definitely isn't, but that's what has to happen, right? It's really easy for us all to sit in our own separate camps and think we have all the answers, but until you're really talking with each other, not much gets done.
And I suppose we have to be satisfied at times with the slow pace of progress.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, as long as there is forward movement, I guess it can be really hard to be okay with slow, but.
Well, I should say as long as we continue to move forward, but
yes,
but we're not going to conquer Rome in a day.
Right.
And all that being said, it looks like Treetops Collective is really doing some amazing work. I'm going to ask you now to offer a brief perspective on the history of the organization, maybe, and how it has evolved somewhat from its founding, and then what you do.
Okay, sounds good. So Treetops started around 7 years ago. And it really grew out of a question that our executive director, Tara, and a co-founder, what she was just noticing in a relationship that she had with a new American neighbor. And just the question of how can West Michigan truly be home for these women who are finding themselves here, not just a place where they have, passively been resettled, right? But a place where they are putting down roots and they know that they can thrive here and that their families can flourish here. Just that sense of belonging and community. So it really grew out of that question. And the idea is just connecting with and investing in new American women and teen girls, so that West Michigan can become a place where communities or folks can belong in community.
Just one question. Why women? Why not boys and girls and men and women?
Yeah, the focus has really been women empowering women.
Okay.
And there's a lot of isolation, I think, that I think a lot of us feel in society right now, right? But for refugee and immigrant women, there's the language barrier, and maybe they are home with kids, is, getting to know people at work and practicing English. They really are a lot of times just feeling lonely. And a lot of them have really strong leadership skills that they maybe don't recognize as leadership skills. So the idea has really been just helping them to see the leadership skills that they already have and then cultivating those so that they can reach whatever goals that they have, whether that's academically or career-wise or within their families, but seeing the value that they inherently have and then building connections and community.
Mm-hmm. And how is this accomplished? How does Treetops move forward here?
Yes. So we have a few main programs, a few main pieces. As of a year ago, we have a full collective care team, and that is led by a woman who came from Ukraine in the last couple of years. And then we have 5 specialists on that team, each from a different first language. So each of them leads what we call circles of support in their first language. Those are 6-week sessions for refugee and immigrant folks, again, facilitated in that person's first language, really focused on stress management, resilience, mental health, and well-being. The other part of the collective care role is resource navigation. So connecting folks to the resources that exist here in West Michigan. There are lots of resources, lots of organizations, but if you have that transportation barrier, language barrier, childcare barrier, it's not necessarily accessible to everyone. So the collective care team does that resource navigation. Our biggest program is called Concentric, and we have a women's concentric program and a teen concentric. The idea there is, again, split into language group. So for the women's program, it's split into 8 language groups, each led by a new American woman of that language group. And she builds a cohort of 7 or 8 women from her community, and they stay in the program for a full year. So they are really getting a deep bond with each other. They cover a different topic each month through a curriculum that we developed with new Americans on our staff. So financial literacy, educational goals, just a variety of topics that they're covering. So the relational piece is really foundational, though, building community with each other. And then connected to that is the final piece, which is my role, and the cross-cultural program. So each woman that's in the concentric program is matched with a volunteer who has lived here longer. So often the volunteers have lived here in the US their whole lives. Not necessarily. We do have some refugee women who have lived here for several years and feel very connected and rooted, and feel that they can pour into another woman in that way. But that cross-cultural partner really just walks alongside the refugee or immigrant woman during her time in the program. And it's really about mutuality. So it's not a mentorship, which implies a hierarchy, right? It's a mutual friendship where both women have something to learn from each other, ways that they can grow together, and bridging those cultural divides that exist so prevalently in our culture. So, or in our society, I should say.
Well,
so that's where my role is. Oh, go ahead.
No, I said, that sounds amazing.
It really is. It really is. It's a gift to get to do this for work. My role is really just connecting people. So it's recruiting and training volunteers, but really then just supporting friendships that they are building with women of a different cultural background than them. So going back to what we were saying before, you know, conversations have to happen for anything to change in our society, right? So being able to be friends with someone who has a completely different background than you and maybe a different religious tradition and, you know, all different, just a different cultural context. We just can learn so much from each other. So.
Certainly, and I would have to think that many of these women and girls had experienced trauma prior to arriving in the U.S., which gives them a preconceived notion of how to relate to other people, particularly men in society. Is any of that addressed at all by Treetops?
Yes. That's usually at the leader level. Not so much, I'm sure those conversations happen with the cross-cultural partners, but often I think the women are talking to those things or talking to their leader about those topics because the leader does share a cultural background with them. Because that is really difficult. I just think of, you know, domestic violence and those kinds of things, and the differences in cultural views on those. And if I were to address it with a member, it would be easy for me to inflict more harm without trying.
Sure. Right? Well, absolutely.
So
that's why I ask how it's employed.
Yes, the leaders cover those topics. We have had Safe Haven do workshops with the teens in the past, and we've talked about employing different organizations in that as well for the teens specifically. I know my kids have a little training every year at school from the Children's Advocacy Center. And we really would like to do something like that with the teens. A lot of them don't necessarily know the concept of like bodily autonomy, right? Or, you know, that they can say no to a man, any of those things. Those are not widely taught in some communities. And we want that to change for the teens in our program. So.
Well, many people don't realize that Grand Rapids has a history of being an entrepot for refugees since the fall of Saigon in 1975 and until today. And there have been organizations in the city that have not only welcomed refugees and provided refugees with the tools, I suppose, and accommodations to learn about becoming or being new Americans, but we do see these changes occurring rapidly in our society, and we're not immune in West Michigan from many conflicts, social conflicts associated with having these welcome mats open. Does your organization experience any threats or any critiques from those who wish to condemn the new Americans?
Good question. I'm sure that has happened. I don't keep an eye on our social media. I have heard a couple different times when there's been comments on our social media about those types of things. Day to day, not really, though. I was on a meeting with folks who are doing work at the border, the southern border, and was just kind of contemplating it after the meeting, how there really just is. It's like we're both working with refugee and immigrant folks, but it's almost completely different, night and day, because we are working at Treetops. We're working with folks who are already here. They have come through a resettlement agency or whatever way they have gotten here. They're here in the community. So now let's make it so that they are rooted and find community and feel belonging, right? So we are, I don't want to say we're separated from a lot of that, but we kind of are. We kind of are. We're not in the political stuff every day, the way that folks who are working at nonprofits on the border are. So we are a little bit sheltered from that in the sense that our work is coming in after folks are here.
And can you offer a mosaic, if you will, of where the immigrants are coming from that you're serving?
Yeah, sure. So we have, like I said, we have 8 different language groups. So they really are coming from all over. This year we have a group, 2 different Spanish groups, one for Venezuelans and one for Cubans. And we have a group for Haitians this year for the first time. We, in the past, have had a group for Ukrainians, Afghan arrivals, Nepal, and then several East African countries. So Congo, Sudan, a variety of East African countries. So really, really all over.
And do the women and girls from these different regions engage in dialogue among themselves in your offices, or is there a social gathering in which they can convene?
We have one big gathering for all of the women. The teen program is a little different in that they do get together regularly across the different language groups.
The teens do.
The teens do. Yep. The women, it's just logistically, there's twice as many women in the program, first of all, but also, kids and work and all of the different responsibilities that they have, all of the different schedules. It's difficult to get them all in one place. That being said, we do have one outing every month that anybody who can make it comes to it. So that really it's usually the volunteers and the person they've been partnered with. So it's usually a variety of folks at those. And then we have one big picnic in the summer for everybody.
Well, and that facilitates that relationship building that really creates a sense among individuals that, hey, we're not in this alone. There are other people that are experiencing these same circumstances. They might speak a different language, but we're in this together in a sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you believe your greatest challenges are really in engaging in this effort, both personally and the organizations? Personally, meaning your position.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think for my role specifically, it can be difficult to navigate. The volunteers are, really want to be involved. They really want to walk alongside this woman. And it can be hard to navigate, if the woman is in survival mode and really doesn't have capacity to create a new friendship right now, right? And we try to discern that before even matching people. But, schedules and all of that, it does make it difficult to start a friendship out of nothing. So that can be difficult for sure. I think that's probably the hardest thing, is managing expectations.
Sure. Well, Nick Kristof said in my interview of him, 2011, he said, helping people is hard. It's not easy. Helping people is hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Organization, also a very good question. I don't know. I think that Treetops is extremely good at being responsive to problems as they arise, or not even problems, challenges, and shifting if something isn't working, and being really member-led. One of our values, again, is posture of listening. So making sure that we're listening to what the community members and community leaders actually want, right? And what's important to them. So I feel like any challenges that have come up, and again, that's usually just life getting in the way of commitments. I feel like we've been navigating them pretty well. So for example, the teen program is undergoing a huge shift right now. We're shifting into school-based programming because we were just discovering that teens' plates are full. They've got family responsibilities. A lot of the girls take care of younger siblings at home. They have jobs. They have after-school activities. So follow through in program commitments was a challenge. So shifting that model, and now we'll be in 3 different schools, meeting the girls where they're at. We're not losing any of the amazing stuff about the program, but hopefully leaving behind some of the challenging stuff. So yeah, I guess I don't have a good answer for that, because I think that Treetops is really gifted in just shifting and moving and, oop, that's not working. Let's do this instead. So.
And that's okay. And that's okay. So we have about a minute to go here, and I'm going to ask you about your life, about Treetops, and just reflect for a moment on where you've been, where this geography education has taken you, and what words of advice might you have for a student who's an undergraduate considering geography and thinking about geography as a pathway to gaining a position that enables them to make a difference in society, ameliorating social injustice?
That's good. I feel like that's almost 2 different. So my advice is take all the geography classes, for one thing.
And why?
Because it really did take me a couple. Like I said, physical geography was the first one. And I was like, this is not my thing, but I think that geography as a whole could be. So taking, physical and urban and whatever else really did open my eyes to the breadth of the field of geography. So that would be step one, would be just take a lot of geography classes and see. And otherwise, I think just go for it. Like if you, at least for the human geography side of things, if you want to make a difference, geography does matter. Like people shape the place that you're in, and the place that you're in shapes the people in it. So it really does matter. So I'm all for geography as a field and as a major and all the things. I think just go for it.
MaryAnne, thank you so much for joining us today. Those are really, really wonderful, wonderful ways in which to conclude this episode, because yes, geography does matter. It enables us to understand the character of places and the people that occupy those places.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I, again, am overjoyed that you were able to make it. And this concludes this episode of Conversation with a Geographer. Thank you.